Okay. All right. So we are live. Well, not live, really. We're recording. Sorry. So we are, me, myself, and I are chatting with Jeni Streeter. And Jeni is a founding board member of the Mom of an Addict. And I'm just really, we were just chatting for the longest time before this. Um, and I really appreciate your time to chat and to kind of share your story and your son's story. And so I appreciate your willingness and his willingness to, kind of help break the stigma and share stories to help other people either find help for substance use or families get support because why we're talking about it is that we don't talk enough about it. And by sharing our stories, struggles, and successes, hopefully we can help others and break stigma surrounding that. So with that, I thank you very much for chatting with me.
I'm glad to be here.
And I'll just kind of hand it over to you, and you can kind of share. um, yeah, we can go ahead.
All right. Um, our story starts, I believe, in probably 2012 is when my husband and I were first made aware that our son had an issue. Um, we had noticed some behavioral changes, and at that time he was probably 17, 18, maybe 18. So that's such a tough time anyway in a teenager's life. And I had just been diagnosed with MS that year also. So we kind of had a lot going on, and noticed something just wasn't right with Tommy. He just didn't look right. He had lost some weight. His friends were not the wonderful, beautiful friends he had in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they had changed. And I thought maybe he was just suffering some depression, um, tried to get him to go to counseling. I believe towards the end, my husband asked him almost daily, what's wrong? Please tell me what's wrong. They had a great relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So they just would talk about everything. So it wasn't unusual for him to ask that. But it got to the point where we just knew something was wrong. Never in my wildest dreams would I ever have thought what was really wrong, was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Never. I came home from work one day and my husband was in the garage painting something, which was really weird. It was like a Monday at 3 o'clock, which as soon as I opened the garage door up, there he was. And I was like, and he sat me down and he said, don't worry, I need to tell you something. I've got it under control, is what he said. I've got it under control. And he said Tommy has a problem with prescription pain medicine. And I've already talked to HR. We're looking to get him into rehab. Now, this was in, I don't know, 2012 or 13. So you have to realize that at that time, it was not like it is now. You couldn't Google, rehab Fort Wayne and have 3 places show up. It was maybe 3 in Indiana. It wasn't easy. And my HR did find someone where it's in Goshen, and we took him there 2 days later. So it was a 2-day turnaround from when we found out to where we got him into this place. And he was there for, I think we took him on Wednesday, and it was terrible. It was heartbreaking. It was like leaving your newborn baby somewhere. That's kind of what my brain felt like.
Yeah.
And the woman who ran it was a nurse, and her husband and son worked there as a counselor. So it was like a big farmhouse, which probably should have been our first clue, but we didn't know. And there were probably, I would guess, maybe 6 or 7 other patients there. And we met them all and kind of felt comfortable leaving him in this environment.
Mm-hmm.
And we left and probably had the best night of sleep we'd had in years, knowing that he's safe and he's where he should be. And they had visitation on a Sunday. So Wednesday to Sunday he was there. And I was so excited to go see him. He is just like my best friend. He looks just like me. My friends say he's like slapped right off my face. I mean, he's just spitting image of me. And I was so excited. I baked cookies and a cake and bought all kinds of stuff to take for the other patients there so they could eat and put him in, I made a big deal of it. And we got there and they couldn't find Tommy, which instantly I knew something was wrong because he knew we were coming. Mm-hmm. And he was excited for us to come. Couldn't find him. So it took maybe 10 minutes. And then this whole time, my blood pressure is just going and my limbs are just going numb because that's what MS stress causes that. So my arms and legs are just going numb. And I hear someone scream from the basement that they were in the bathroom. So there were 2 patients that they couldn't find. They were in the bathroom in the basement and the door was locked and they weren't answering. So my husband ran downstairs with another father that was there. And they broke the door down into the bathroom and they were passed out on the floor, overdosed on heroin, both of them. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't let me go down there. And at this time, we didn't even know it was heroin. We thought it was prescription pills. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, there was a difference, Mm-hmm. Heroin is the worst of the worst, but prescription pills, I mean, you can find them at your grandma's house. In my mind at that time, I did not equate that with this terrible, terrible addiction. So they both overdosed and were not breathing. And by the grace of God and whoever else was watching out for them, one of the patients was a paramedic. So he showed, I believe it was my husband, how to do CPR on Tommy while he was doing it on the other patient. Wow. And they wouldn't let me go downstairs. Yeah. So all I could do is hear this. Standing at the top of the steps, there was people standing there. They wouldn't let me go downstairs to my son, mm-hmm. which I think now probably was a good thing, but how I didn't just break through them and go down there, I don't know. But, so I could hear everything. And my husband ended up doing the CPR on him, and once his eyes started flickering, he just smacked him across the face and he said, "You're not going to do this to your mother today, or are you going to do this to your mother today?" And his eyes just started flickering, and Tommy was in better shape than the other person that was there. They went to the Goshen Hospital and they kept him there for a few hours. All of our family ended up being there. Mm-hmm. And once Tommy came around, they wouldn't keep him. They wouldn't keep him overnight to give me time and my husband time to find somewhere else to take him. Mm-hmm. I mean, we just needed like 12 hours. We needed him to stay there overnight so we knew he was safe, so we could find somewhere. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't do it. And they had a social worker come talk to us. And he tried to talk us into taking Tommy to South Bend and dropping him off at the Men's Salvation Army for a homeless shelter. And I'm like, I don't know what kind of people you think we are. I was offended. I was like, he's not homeless. We just need a couple hours to find somewhere else to take him. Yeah. And he wouldn't do it. So when I was in the hallway talking to one of the doctors, I took my keys out of I had them in a pocket, I took my car keys out and I said, I'm going to go stab him. I'm going to go stab my son in the leg. He'll never know. Mm-hmm. He's still high as a kite. He'll never know. I'm going to go stab him so you'll keep him. Mm-hmm. And I didn't stab him and I was escorted out of the hospital. And I think back now and it was unbelievable, the difference between today and then. But they made us take him home. We took him home. My sister-in-law was a paramedic and she stayed at our house that night. And I stayed downstairs. She stayed upstairs in Tommy's bed with him. Now he was still high. He just was, and she read all night to make sure he didn't leave. And in case she dozed off, I was at the downstairs, right in front of in the living room that had the front door in it. So we knew he couldn't, or that we would catch him if he tried to get out. I mean, and we did that until we were able to get him into somewhere else. So that's how it started for us.
Wow.
And I think it was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Like at what point when you guys decided to take him to rehab, um, I mean that was only a matter of days between like
Mm-hmm.
when you found out rehab
Right.
and then
I
the hot,
believe it was 2 days. Yeah.
wow. So your world went from like,
Mm-hmm.
relatively normal, something's
Yeah.
wrong with my son, we'll help him take care of it, to like full speed, everything's changed.
Yeah. Full speed heroin addict.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I ended up quitting my job. I never went back.
Mhm.
Um, and that begun 7 years of different rehabs.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of support did your family have? Like, did you feel like you couldn't really talk about it? Did you feel like there were people, a tight circle? How?
We have the best family, the
Mhm.
best. They did everything they possibly could, everything. And then I had two friends, a sister-in-law, and then two friends that just were my lifeline
Yeah.
during that time. And even though they didn't understand, they
Mhm.
knew and saw what we had gone through, but they're so empathetic and they're just such lovely people that just they just don't get it.
Yeah.
And then why and how could you?
Yeah.
There's just no way you can understand
Yeah.
what that is.
Hmm. And when he went to rehab, like the second time and the third time, and was there always that hope of recovery with each time?
Oh my goodness, every single time I would drop him off. And I
Mhm.
think it was always me that took him. My husband, it was always these weird, the weird time of day to where my husband would be at work and it's like, if someone agrees to go to rehab, you go. You don't sit around and make plans. You get in the car and you go.
Yeah.
You don't plan for it. And I just was the one who would take him often. And it just, I don't know, I kind of lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Um, yeah, just talking about each time that you took.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Every time I dropped him off, I knew it. I knew this was going to be the time. I knew it. I could just feel it. I knew it.
Hmm.
And every time I was wrong.
Yeah. And how did you deal with that? Like, and I guess I'm still learning and kind of naive to the whole um, relapse piece as well, because does it come back stronger? Like with each relapse, did he try to hide it more? Like there's probably even with.
Um, I guess now that I think back, he would do well for a couple months each time.
Mhm.
And so each time, it would be stressful at first, and then it would get better. And he would get a job and he would do great.
Mhm.
And I would start trusting him and relying on him more.
Mhm.
But then, and I don't know that it was like a single boom, he's using again. I think it was a slow
Yeah.
I think it was just a slow progression again
Yeah.
until it would get really bad again.
Yeah. Like this is something I can manage. This is something I can manage.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps.
Yeah, exactly. And I do honestly believe that he thought and tried to get better each time. I do believe that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I do believe at the end, the only reason he went to rehab is because he had nowhere else to go. We
Mhm.
wouldn't let him go to any of our family's homes. He couldn't come back to ours. I think that probably at the end, it was a bed,
Yeah.
maybe the fifth or sixth time.
Yeah.
But I think the last time, I think he just was done. He knew he couldn't live like that anymore.
Yeah.
And my other son would stop letting our grandchildren. He didn't want the grandchildren to be around him, and I understood that. I totally understood that,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it was just tough.
How do you and he's been sober for how long now?
It will be 3 years, April 1st.
Wow. That's
Mhm.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And um as a mom, so like as a mom's perspective or any advice that you might give to moms who are, you know, have dropped off their son at rehab and or just got their kiddos home, what would advice would you give yourself back then?
Oh gosh. Um, I would I would say what I did, and probably it was not good at all. Is I enabled him so much.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I just had such hope, and I loved him so much, and had so much hope that if he wanted to go to whatever, I mean, we gave him cars, we did everything. And if he had told me that sky was, I don't know, whatever color a sky shouldn't be, I'd have believed it and made, oh, well, I guess if you look at it, it really is kind of that color. That's just how I was. And I'll tell you, it was so detrimental. I wish I would have known more about enabling
Mm-hmm.
because that's what about killed him.
Uh,
I truly believe in my heart that's what I did wrong.
what is that? And I hear that just a lot, the whole dynamic and the enabling, because you don't want to believe something is as bad as it is, or
Right.
you want to give your children
Mm-hmm.
the best. Like that's at the end of the day,
Yeah,
like
I mean, your brain doesn't want to think that. Your brain doesn't want to not almost acknowledge that.
yeah.
And you have to. I mean, you can't bury your head in the sand, which is what I did.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, when I was done, and Tommy said this a few times, once he knew I was done, he
Mhm.
knew he had no more options.
Yeah.
And I was the holdout. My husband would have been done years before me. And I was the holdout. I held it up. I enabled him. And I blame myself. I probably will blame myself for that forever because I remember the day that and it's tough. I remember that if I gave him $20 for gas, and he was working, making like I don't know, $18 or $19 an hour at the time, but he never had any money. He didn't
Mhm.
have a car payment. He didn't have insurance. He had no bills. He lived at home and he didn't have any money.
Mhm.
And I don't know what I thought he did with it. How stupid could I have been? Because I know what he did with it.
Mhm.
But it's like your brain just plays this little trick on you, I guess.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking that if he died, I would maybe one day, be able to smile again. Maybe maybe that would happen.
Mhm.
But if he died with the $10 I gave him to go get a McDonald's sandwich,
Mhm.
when in my head I knew he wasn't going to McDonald's, he was skin and bones. But if he died with that $10 I gave him, I knew I could never live with myself again. Never. I could never ever do that. And that's when I got it and I stopped.
Mhm.
And I made him leave. My husband made him leave, and I wouldn't let him come back. And that's when he said, once mom was done, I knew I had no more options.
Wow. That's really
And he,
powerful.
yeah, and I knew that I couldn't live with myself.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have lived if
Yeah.
I helped him kill himself.
Yeah.
And that's what it took.
And I hear a lot of, going through it, you had to learn it too. Like you weren't given the tools and the support. Wonderful
No.
family support. So the
Mm-hmm.
blame is totally not, and there's no to blame, like we're not looking to blame here. And I can't put myself in your shoes and anything, but I can't imagine that anybody would say this is your fault, like
No,
that.
probably not. No. But still.
I can imagine as a mom, like I mentioned, you have three boys and we're always responsible for them and always putting ourselves last and always
Mm-hmm.
wanting the best for our kiddos. So when we have to make that decision, it's interesting because even when we start like motherhood too, like when you're training your kid, when you're sleep training, when you're doing any type of thing with the baby, it's like the the mother, it's when the mom is done breastfeeding, when the mom is done changing diapers,
Yes.
like that's when stuff changes.
Hmm.
That's when,
Exactly.
and this is
Hmm.
kind of the same thing, but you have to get to that point. And so, bless your heart for trying
Yeah.
as much as you knew how to do.
And I will tell you, once I got to that point,
Yeah.
it was like just something came over me, and I thought, what am I doing? I just got it. And I wish that I would have gotten it years earlier, because
Yeah.
maybe this would have maybe, you know, taken a different path. I don't know. But
Yeah. Well, so glad we are glad that you are here now sharing your story and you are on the other side of that.
yeah.
And a countless amount of people, a mom of an addict helps. Do you want to share a little bit more about the organization and what you guys do and like the programs and the
Yes, I would love to. Yes. I met Jen Hope, the founder, at, we were both in a class to become recovery coaches. And I think it's kind of a new thing within the recovery industry, where someone goes through training and just doesn't really help you with anything, but just kind of guides you,
Mhm,
tries to keep you accountable, the addicts, that want the help.
mhm.
And that's how I met Jen. And Tommy was actually doing the class too. And the only reason really that I signed up for this class is so Tommy would do it and I knew he was there. So I did it with him to
Mhm.
make sure that he was there. I mean, see, it never stops. Never.
No,
It never
it
stops.
doesn't.
So I ended up sitting through this class, getting my becoming a recovery coach.
Mhm.
And I had a few clients that I worked with, and it just wasn't for me. It just brought up too many memories. I was not in a good space. My head was not in a good space. So I stopped doing that. But Jen Hope and I had talked about what she wanted to do, and it just sounded exactly like what I was looking for, what I would have wanted, what I wished I would have had. Someone who understood just one day, one hour of my life, someone that understood that,
Mhm.
I would have been so grateful for that. So we put together a board, and we have a really great board of directors. And our first meeting in Fort Wayne, I think that Donna, John, and I probably would have been happy maybe if we had 10 to 15 people. That would have been great for us. I think we had like 66 people. If
Wow.
I'm not mistaken in that number, I believe that's the number. But they couldn't even all fit in the room. So we had people pulling chairs out in the hallway, our
Wow.
first meeting. And we thought, we are really onto something.
Yeah.
So we hold the meetings once a week, and we're getting ready to have another location, which is exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah. So and we have people come from
Yeah.
all around. And
Yeah.
it's just people wanting to be understood for that little bit of time,
Mhm.
and to meet someone who knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's powerful,
Mhm.
powerful. Even if you sit in a meeting and don't say a word, what you hear is every single story is 95% the same.
Mhm.
And the only thing that's different are the names and the
Mhm.
faces. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
it's
and in the meetings you have, like you might have different speakers or different topics and that
uh-huh.
as well.
We have had some incredible therapists. We've had doctors. We've had addiction specialists.
Wow.
We have a sibling panel,
Mhm.
which that's really helpful for the parents
Yeah.
to be enlightened as to what the siblings have seen and felt.
Mhm.
Because often they're, I won't say neglected, but their needs are kind of put over here when you're putting out the fire. That's all you can.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting and helpful for the siblings to get up and talk.
Yeah.
So
Um,
that's a real popular one. But yeah.
that's awesome. And I just remember thinking, and you guys have been around for a year, 2 years? I just,
We just had our year anniversary last summer. So it's
okay.
been maybe a year and a half now.
And the growth has been tremendous. And um, I just think that there's so much value to what the organization is providing to the community, and just filling a need for the families because we talk about it a lot, but you know, and even I shared that Wayne interview, and one thing that they mentioned, now that I just blank out on it, is that share the numbers of
It happens to the best of us.
I'm going somewhere with this.
Yes.
But we share the numbers of people who have been, who have had an overdose, or you have all the numbers and the data and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And you have the focus on the addict. But also, in order to support the addict, we need to support the family.
Right.
And beyond the addict is the family that also needs the mental health support, the practical
Hmm.
support. Like you just said, you're putting out a fire over here. I don't really care which bills are being, like,
Exactly. As long as you're still kicking over here, we're good. Your brain just can't do that. You
yeah,
just can't spread your time when you've got, when you're trying to save a life. And it's not just you're trying to save life one time a week.
yeah,
It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it was almost 7 years for
yeah,
us. I
yeah.
mean, he was, I believe, I believe it was 7 times we had him in rehab.
Wow, wow.
So it just,
But and I think as a mom, you mentioned too, like that hope that you have when he does go to rehab,
mm-hmm,
just keeping that hope. And I think in one of our earlier conversations, it might have been Donna, but just always loving them. Like you don't have to love their choices. You don't have to, like, you can
right.
to not, support what
You
they're,
don't have to love the behavior, but
yeah,
you love the person. Yeah.
and letting them know that they are always loved.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just tremendous. And you don't know who's being impacted by it right now. You don't know who's struggling, or who has a family member struggling, or a friend
Mm-hmm.
struggling. So
Yeah. And I share all of our meetings on our social media and then I share it on mine. And the messages that I get are from people that you never would have thought. I mean, I never would have thought it would happen to us. So I don't mean that in any other way, but I mean, these people just contact us and say, well, my brother, my son, my daughter, and they're everywhere
mhm,
and no one talks about it.
mhm,
And that's so hard. It's so hard on the family to not be able to um, get any type of support or even talk about it because you don't want to look bad or you don't want people to think badly of you.
yeah, yeah,
And I remember telling someone, I'm like, we buy Girl Scout cookies from your children. We're the subdivision neighbor. We wave when you walk by with your dog. We're not bad people.
yeah.
And, at that time in my mind, heroin addict to me is, at that time was, oh, not us,
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just,
Like it's so
it's just
far
not the case.
removed, and then all of a sudden it's in your house, and then
Yeah.
what do
And it's in your house to stay for a while, unfortunately.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things too I wanted to mention, or kind of a reference, I guess, is that in that coverage, it mentioned that he had started with pain pills
Mm-hmm.
from an injury, and then
Uh-huh.
became, you know,
High school football. Yeah.
yeah. And so that's just something so important as well. Even though I don't want to say even though, like, that's just really important piece of when
Right.
you are vulnerable, when they know everything.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. And so many of the moms we talked to, um, their children have gotten started on the pain medication from their wisdom teeth. Whoever would have never in a million years would I have thought that.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just something to be aware of and think about and you know, just to be aware of. And that's why we have these conversations and educate, and because we don't need to lose another life to any type
No.
of addiction. And like, when someone's struggling with addiction or when the family's struggling with addiction, it impacts, like you left your job, it impacts the
Mm-hmm.
community in more ways than
Yeah.
just the addiction. So,
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does.
yeah. So, well, I really appreciate your time, Jenny, sharing Tommy's story and your perspective as a mom. And please let him know as well. Congratulations on his upcoming anniversary. We'll be thinking
Oh,
about
I will.
it. And congratulations to you and family on that
uh,
milestone as well.
yeah, thank you.
But you guys are, you're all doing amazing work, but you need to continue to take care of yourself and support yourself. And I hope that continues as well. So,
Yeah,
um,
I am actually making an effort. So,
yeah, that's all we can do. Baby
making an
steps.
effort. Yes.
That's all.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny. And I appreciate your time and everything. And if anybody has any questions or wants to learn more about the mom of an addict, I'll leave some information, in the comments. And when it comes to Mission Motherhood, I just really want to focus on all aspects of motherhood when it comes to addiction, mental health, because mothers are the backbone of our family, our communities, and we need to help support and raise awareness of issues that, impact them greatly. So, and this certainly is one of them. And just let other moms know that there are resources for them in whatever journey they are on, and that they are not alone. So, I appreciate
Exactly. And you're
appreciate.
welcome to put my email and my phone number if you'd like.
Okay.
Um, I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And
Yeah,
yeah, we will talk to you soon.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. We will have a wonderful evening.
I will. You too. Bye.